Hello, everyone. Will Gasper from the Cadillac office of Hospice of Michigan. And David Kessel wrote um, this material that David Keller, our grief support counselor that actually presented this topic, presented to about 12 guys, and he would ask questions as he was reading David Kessler's statements. And so this uniqueness of your grief is has many factors depending on your relationship with the deceased before their death and the relationship of with your loved one at the time of death. And of course, everyone has their own background as far as their life up to that point, whether that was family of origin or their own family that they had at the time of the loss, the relationship with those around them, their friends, their family, perhaps church affiliation, their faith, and so many other factors. So Kessler stated that there was a need for someone to recognize and acknowledge their grief. So Dave Keller asked, how did that touch the people that joined us that night on August 17th, was just this 2 days ago, as I do with this recording. And several men very much identified with that option or that way of thinking, that they very much wanted someone to recognize what they were going through, what they had experienced. But the important part of that was, for them anyway, these two men, they wanted someone just to listen. They didn't want anyone to go ahead and give them a lecture or give them a sermon or tell them what they should or shouldn't do, what they should or shouldn't feel. They just wanted somebody to listen, someone that was understanding and not judgmental. And then David Keller said, what about having people acknowledging your grief and acknowledge some of the feelings that you may be feeling? And several gentlemen actually responded to that, saying, yes, bringing comfort to them through their just behaviors or their what they did just to come in to, and again, that was to listen, but they both acknowledged that these type of people are very rare indeed in this world today. So many people want to take the microwave approach, hit the start button, and then in 2 minutes it's done. And so many people can't take the time or don't want to take the time to be there in a gentle, understanding, safe way for the grieving person to just to share what they're going through. And one of the other guys said that their experience has helped them build compassion in their own life. There's a small percentage of people who really care. And so because of the loss of his wife, he's now more gentle. He's now more understanding. He gives people grace because everyone has a story. Everyone is going through something, either currently or in the past. And so it's really helped him to see the good in people and give them some grace and give them some room to vent a little bit. And then about 6 months that after the loss of this one man's wife, a friend of his called and said, so and so, how about we get together for a cup of coffee? How about we talk? And that really meant a lot to this man. It meant that he had not been forgotten, and he hadn't forgotten the person who died. Another man responded, 4 months in, he's still in denial. He can't believe he lost his wife. He feels empty. And so he's still struggling. And then someone asked, well, how long does this grief journey last? 17 months? No, not even close. The grief is still there. It's just not as intense as it once was. So time doesn't completely heal. It kind of goes against the old saying, time heals all wounds. Perhaps with a physical injury, a physical wound, but an emotional, mental, psychological wound needs time and facing the grief that's in front of us. Someone once said, grief's like a wall. You can't go over it, can't go under it, can't go around it. You got to go through it. And that's just the way it is, along with it takes time to do that, of course. And doing grief work, being in a support group, seeing a counselor, a therapist, perhaps a minister, your pastor. And of course, we all would love a trusted friend, a friend who is going to be empathetic, understanding, and non-judgmental. Another person says, you know what a secondary loss of spouse or loss of a loved one is that you no longer have a person, a very special person to share your experiences with. One man went to a Tigers baseball game, had a great time. He got home and he wanted to tell his wife, but his wife has died 10 months ago. So he felt sad again. In fact, as he was telling that story, he teared up because he realized that, again, for the many 1,000th time, she wasn't there and she wasn't coming back. And then Mr. Keller asked, what are some of the silly words of advice that others had to offer? Well, of course, well, it must have been their time. Or, you know, she's better off now. Or God needed another angel. And I'm sure most of all of you have heard those statements, those words of advice, those people meaning to help you console, help you to be consoled, wanting to care, show they care. But obviously, sometimes they hurt. Sometimes you just want to throw a wet towel at them and say, go away. But if we give them grace and think in our own minds that they're just trying to be helpful, it's easier to kind of forgive them and give them grace. Another thing that is different and unique about folks and how they grieve is the cultural differences. And one of the gentlemen was talking about when he lost his son. The people in his church, there was a group from Tanzania, Tanzania, and they came, about 12 of them, and they stayed for 24 hours to help, just to give support. In Tanzania, they would stay for 3 to 4 weeks in their homeland. And this man was telling that they were cleaning just anything, windows, floors, walls. Some people were preparing food. Others were just sitting. If he wanted to talk, he could have conversations. But they were there for 24 hours. And in another culture, people would bring furniture during the night and put it on the front lawn, symbolizing that the community, the neighborhood, the community has lost something. Everyone has lost something. So they each bring a piece of furniture from their own house. And then when in the morning, the grieving person sees all these pieces of furniture, it symbolizes that their world has changed. They have all this extra furniture, and their world is no longer a familiar world with the furniture they already had in their house. Another example was a man talked about growing up in a farming community and seeing that when someone, especially a male, had passed away just before harvest season, the surrounding farmers, and that didn't matter how far they had to travel, 10 miles, doesn't matter. They would drop their harvest plans and make sure that the grieving widow didn't have to worry about the harvest. Some brought tractors, some brought wagons and tractors, some brought trucks to haul the grain to the market, the elevator. Some people brought combines and just whatever was needed. And they took care of the harvest at that widow's farm because they wanted her not to worry about it. She had enough on her plate. And so the community was supporting that widow. And in a way, we're probably grieving perhaps their friend or perhaps a neighbor, perhaps a stranger. It didn't matter. Whoever showed up wanted to support that grieving family. And lastly, we kind of closed with the general consensus that just like that first gentleman I mentioned here, that this experience has made many of them more compassionate toward others, more understanding, more patient. And that in itself is a sign of growth, a sign of strength, that grieving, while it's tough, there are good things that come out of it. So that's about the recap. Not very, very, much detail there, but it was a very good supportive group. And we'll be getting together again the first Tuesday of September. And I believe that date is September 7th, 6 p.m., Hospice of Michigan, HOM.org, and grief, under the grief program, you'll find our schedule there. Okay, everyone, God bless and take care of yourself. Bye-bye.